it helps soften it up, that way it's not like a Brillo pad.
Yeah, better for smooching. All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to vBrownBag, the weekly IT learning video podcast and apparently hair care tips, where we bring you the experts in the wide world of technology to talk about their favorite topics, kind of like a show and tell for geeks. This evening, we are very excited to continue with the Python series with author, podcaster, amazingly well-maned person, and somebody that I met at PyCon this year, Brian Okken. Hello, good sir. How are you doing this evening?
I'm excellent. It's good to see you again.
You had not met Shala yet, so we did some of those introductions, and Sean Doyle is also shown up. Welcome, Sean.
I'm good. Yeah, I'm good. Good to see everyone. Hi, Brian.
Hey, good to meet you.
Brian, have you and Sean met before?
Oh, we just did.
Well, I mean, Sean, you weren't at PyCon this year, were you?
No, I didn't. I did not attend this year.
Gotcha.
I don't know if I went to Python web conference either. I went last year.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Sean also circulates in the Calvin Hendricks Parker Python worldwide. We've all worked in various positions at various different places, so I always assume that everybody just knows everybody else. So I apologize.
Yeah, I've been kind of hiding out in the embedded software world for most of my career. So I'm, most of the world I know just mostly through Python. So, through PyCons and things like that.
And that's how you and I met. We got in a fun little video and then did some dinners together, and then went over to Calvin's Airbnb and had shenanigans there for a good long period of time.
Yes, I wouldn't trade those memories for. Actually, I don't remember much from that.
I was going to say lack of memories.
No, it was good. Good time.
It was the third trip to the liquor store that things started to get fuzzy. All right. So before we get started, a few show notes. If you are in the audience or if you are in the future, feel free to @vBrownBag or #vBrownBag us on your favorite social media, whether that be Twitter or Mastodon or Blue Sky or what else? Threads, Jesus, Instagram. we are vBrownBag on all the things.
Wow.
So feel free to shout out at us and ask us questions, either of us or the illustrious Mr. Okken. So before we get into it, how's the book been treating you? How's the podcast been treating you? I mean, you say you've been holed up, but you actually have a lot of different things going on.
I have too many things going on, actually, right? I think. So the second edition of the book is, I think it's going well. I don't get very many questions for it. So I think either nobody's reading it or it was written well enough that I don't get questions for it. So I'm going to go with the second, probably.
Yeah, we're going with the second one. Yeah.
But writing a book is a little less financially rewarding for the second edition than was the first. Maybe everybody there was already a book out there, and so maybe people didn't need it, but it was okay. Definitely worth it. And I'm turning it into a course now. So
awesome.
I'm doing the entire book as a video course. The first 6 chapters are about 4 hours, I think. And I've got 7 chapters so far, and gonna go do all 16. So that's in the process. You can find that out at pythontest.com. And so that's my blog. So doing the book, Test and Code just changed its name from Test and Code to Python Test because I don't know why I chose Test and Code. So pythontest.com is the blog. Python Test is now the podcast also, but then also Python people. I've started interviewing. Python and then Python Bytes. So I've got 3 podcasts and the book and a full-time job and kids, and I like to cook and garden and things like that, and estate sale. So
wait, you actually have hobbies too? What's going on?
Yeah, well, for for a long time, we were also, my wife and I were also fairly active antique dealers.
That's right. I remember you telling me that.
But with to try to finish up the second edition of the book, we stepped back and we don't do that as active anymore. So it's just sort of a smaller part of our free time is doing that. So, but we still buy as much. We just don't sell as much. So we just have a house full of antiques for the most part.
So you've given up on the getting rid of the hoarding stuff. Now you're just doing the hoarding phase of it. Perfect.
Yeah. Some cool stuff though. My wife, like, one of the things she likes is like 1920s dresses and older. So we've got some really pretty cool fabric collections as well as cool stuff. Like, you can't see it, but I've got this beautiful Biedermeier right next to me.
Biedermeier? What's that?
It's a piece of furniture. It's a big, like a dresser, but fancier.
I'm not. If you start saying fancy furniture names, you have completely lost me. So, awesome. Yeah. The first every time I talk to an author, one of the first things they say is, "Don't do it for the money. do it for the love."
Kinda. I think people are trying to chase people off. It was perfectly. It's not like. I mean, I spent way too long on both editions. I spent a year and a half on each. So I've spent 3 years of my life writing about Pytest so far. But the money was pretty good, actually. It's not terrible. But Pragmatic's really good. So some companies, some groups are like less generous to authors, but Pragmatic splits the revenue 50-50. So I get half of the profit, which is pretty good.
Oh yeah, that's a lot better than some of the offers I got. So
yeah.
Nice. All right. Well, did you say that there was a thing you wanted to talk about that you wanted to share?
Oh yeah, I wanted to talk about testing.
Okay. All right.
Because I kind of like testing.
Obviously, otherwise you wouldn't have written a book about it. Do you want me to stop the screen share and give you the power?
I will. I would like that, and then I'm going to tell a story.
Awesome. I love stories.
So, how do I do this? Screen share.
Oh, thank you, Shala. She put in Biedermeier antique furniture links.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I actually know a little bit about furniture myself.
This is a new site that I did not know about you.
Cool. So I'm still getting used to where everybody is in this screen. My monitors are too big though. So does that show up okay?
Yes, that shows up great.
Okay. So I want people to not be afraid of testing. And so I thought it'd be great to tell people that that there's ways to use testing in a way that I don't see very many people doing it, and it's doing little code experiments. So we're going to do traditionally there's a few ways to do little things. So let's say I just want to print something on the console, print hello world, the traditional. And then I'm using PyCharm, but this is just console stuff anyway. And we print hello world. Now, if I want to print something like you try F strings out, maybe I can do name equals Brian. Oops, need a quote. And then I can go ahead and change that print. And then I need a F string and then name. Cool. So now we've experimented with that, but it's like goes away. You'll lose it when you close the console, right? So there's other ways you can do this. You can just you can have a file and say, hey, I want to print world hello world, and then you can save the file, but then you have to run it. So I'm gonna go ahead and run that, and I get it's a little squinched up. Hello world gets run. Awesome. But now if I want to do the same thing with the F string. Name equals Brian. I'm not worried about fancy syntax. and then I can rerun it, and I get both Hello World and Brian if I want to keep them around. Anyway, so that it just either logs up, or I can just change it in place and I lose it. I'd like to have people utilize tests more, and instead of writing a Python file, now you can just write a test file instead. So before we write our tests, I want to make sure that I'm in a virtual environment, because I'm going to install something. So I've already created a virtual environment. I'm going to do pip install Pytest, because why not? Pytest is the best. I already have it installed, but that's it. I don't have anything else installed, just Pytest in my virtual environment extras. And also, I just learned about this recently, and I don't know why this law. I didn't know this before, but if you do a pip list, it shows like everything. But you can say required. What is it? Required only or something? No, pip list not required, and it mostly just shows you the stuff that you installed. It doesn't show you all the stuff that stuff installed. So like Pytest has a whole bunch of dependencies. So if you just do a pip list, you also get pluggy and packaging and any config, but I didn't install those. So not required is cool. Anyway, so I've got that installed. Close out that, and then I can just write the first thing I want to do, and we can talk about this a little later, is just throw a Pytest any file in the directory. And this just makes sure that Pytest looks for configuration stuff, and it just keeps looking until the root directory. So the Pytest any file in the directory just gets it to stop from looking. So it saves a little bit. So throw that in there. And then I have a test print. And instead of just a file, I've just got a file with a couple functions in there instead. And then I can just run them individually. So I can run my hello world and see the output. Now there's a little bit more output because Pytest has some extra stuff to it, but I still get that little print. And then I can try the F-string one and run that. And that just runs. So I think that testing is a really cool way to just have little things you're trying out, and then you can just keep them around and you can rerun them whenever you want. That's really what I wanted to share with people. We could go deeper, but yeah.
So I guess, Brian, I'd like to ask you a question, because I was actually just talking this week with, so I've been recently digging into a little bit of Go and testing in Go, and I've written in Python too, and done experimented with testing. But like, I know for me personally, I struggle. And I guess, what advice would you give people? Like, so you sit down, you're like, I got this idea. I'm going to start developing it. I'm going to start laying out the framework. And then I guess, would you recommend writing the tests before you write the code? But then you don't necessarily, I guess you have an idea, but it's just a general idea. Like, I guess the hard part is, how do you go from very specific tests to or start with a general test and then get more and more specific as your development gets more and more towards the goal that you're going to,
Well, I think you need to know. So I don't write very many very, very specific tests. And if we're, for people playing at home, the keywords are unit test. I don't really write unit tests very much. So I kind of stick to APIs. That's really what I'm testing often. Unless I'm playing with something. So the playing with something is definitely something I love to do. So for instance, I'm going to throw another example in there that we don't have. So let's say, have you used stacks before? So have you used a list as a stack? This is something that you can do append and what is it? Append. Yeah, I always forget. So let's say I wanted a class. I just wanted to make a new class and I want to derive from list. And the only thing I'm going to override is I'm going to define a push because there isn't a push already in list. And I'm going to push X. And what that really does is it does a self.append X. That's it. Now I've got a stack, which is neat because I can say the things I want to be able to do is push and pop off the list. And that's it, really, for a stack. So I'm going to test my stack. And I'm going to say like X, like I already used X up there. So let's do Y equals, let's just, my stack. My stack equals stack. Now stack, I want to be able to push. So push, foo. And now we can print it, but I really want it. I know it's a list, so I can just assert also. Stack equals foo. And then I can run that. And then I can really think, so that passed. I know that that's really not, I'm not really testing the stack. I'm really testing stack push. And then I can just copy that. So this is kind of a unit test. And I do this with, especially with data structures. Pop Pope, stack Pope.
You can stack popes. That's awesome.
Stack X equals stack. Actually, I don't even need the X, so I can just do assert stack pop equals foo, because you can pop it off. And then also at the end, I want to assert that it's empty. I always forget that length is a function outside of an object and not an object method, but anyway. So I'm just playing with it, but that both passed. I could print stuff out, but I can also just, you can use the debugger to walk through it, which is kind of fun. And then at that point I can see stuff and step and things like that. So I like to use the debugger as well through this stuff. Oh, I have it so big that so you can see the variables and you can step through, and after the pop, the stack is empty. So that's nice. So then we can just run. But being able to debug little tiny things to play with it. But then, so I've just played with I just made a data structure called stack, and I can use it because all I want to do is push and pop from it. So now I can use it places, but I can just leave this test somewhere. This would be more of a unit test, and now I can use the stack somewhere. But the other reason why I can leave this test around is because I can remember how to use it. I can like later when I'm coming back and didn't remember how to use this stuff, I can look at the unit tests. But normally, I guess I'm testing stack through the API that I intend to use. So I'm just testing the push and the pop. But if I had a larger thing, like the cards application that I talk about in the book is a command line application that has like different functions. Like I'm just pip install cards. So cards, and then I can has a bunch of, I can add, and it's a to-do application, so I can add and delete and start and stop things. I would have tests around each of these entry points into the API or through the command line interface. So that's kind of what I would do, is figure out how to test all the user visible functionality. Internal stuff, I don't really do much except for weird data structures, or even just simple data structures. I do like to put tests around those, but I think I went off on the weeds.
Would you recommend then? So I'd like to stay on that topic of the user API piece. Would you typically? I think I know the answer to this, but I wanted to ask you. Like, would you typically write your test first and then modify the API to like have the test fail, modify the API to then pass the test, or would you modify the API and then update the tests once you get it to a position where you're satisfied with the API, right?
I do. I'm not really a test. I am not really a test first person, but I can't. It's so close together that it's hard to tell what I'm doing first or second. I'm just right there. So I want to make sure that I might not write the test first, and I usually don't. I like play with an API or something or an interface, but I'm going to write the test right afterwards because I want to know how it feels to use it. And I'm going to write a test before anybody else sees it and especially before a customer sees it, because then it's too late. It's not too late, but it's hard to back down when you've already have an interface out there. But if you don't have a test around it, you don't know if it's comfortable to use. So I think it's not the end user behavior and even a large thing like a workflow thing of like, how would a user walk through this whole thing? You should be able to write a test for that. And if you can't, then there's a problem with the software, I think. So the tests really help me think about being a user of any code, even if it's not end user code, like a library. Thinking about the person using the library is useful, I think. So
yeah, that's a great point. That makes me think too. It's another way of seeing what you intended with the code. So somebody could look at your code and okay, I kind of understand what's going on here, and then validate that with the test because of the way you're consuming it, in a sense.
I've had interfaces before and that I've tried to use that they ask for information that I don't have, like there's required parameters that I don't have yet. So it's frustrating that I'm pretty sure that nobody wrote a test for it, because if somebody wrote a test for it, they would realize that that's a clunky interface and I don't have the information yet. But or at least there's workflows where I wouldn't have the information. But anyway.
Yeah, no. Thank you. Appreciate that conversation.
To be fair, I write a lot of code that's just code. It's written by, it's not I don't write user interfaces. I don't write I don't like web interfaces or anything. I'm working on it. I've got a couple side projects that are web projects, but normally my day-to-day job is libraries or code that can be accessed through an API.
When you say you've got a couple of side web projects, are you doing something with Mr. Kennedy? He's also doing some web projects.
He's always doing some web projects.
Okay.
No, so I think I talked with you a little bit about it way back at PyCon. I have a software as a service idea that I'm kicking around. That's still in the background, but I had a lot of balls in the air and I really needed to finish a few things. So I want to finish this course first. And then in the meantime, I picked up an extra podcast. I'm not sure why I did that, but
because you weren't busy. Between the books and the two other podcasts.
Well, I'll tell you a secret. I didn't want to do any research for it. So Python Bytes is a lot of work. I have to research topics before we start talking. And
right.
Test and Code is I'm trying to teach people things, but or get some, bring somebody on and actually have a meaningful conversation. Like I love having Brett Cannon on and we talk about packaging or something like that. But there's like at PyCon, I was thinking like if you sat down at breakfast and a table, you could probably BS with somebody for 20-30 minutes easy, right? Without any research ahead of time. You just say, hey, what kind of projects you working on and stuff, and it's pretty easy. So I wanted Python people to be just getting to know the people in Python with no research on my part. So Anyway.
That's a fantastic idea. It's a getting to know you series where you can like just pick people's brains on the things that they're experts on. That's kind of what we do here on vBrownBag, just not specifically for Python too. We talk to everybody about everything, all the stuff that we find exciting.
Yeah, like I never thought I would get asked about hair care on a podcast.
Damn it, Brian. I have a head cold here. Do you mind? Stop trying to make me laugh. No.
Oh, geez, I don't want to catch it.
Yeah, exactly. That is actually the good thing about Zoom life, Zoom land, presenting not in person. The reason I actually caught this cold was because I was at a company offsite last week, and I flew to Jersey City and was in the Newark airport for and getting exposed to all that stuff. That's what I'm blaming anyway. Yeah, when everybody's stuck in their house, very few head colds going around. You know what? We have gotten way off topic. Back to you, Brian.
Well, let's talk a little bit about testing first, because I want people to like.
Let's do
there's
that.
a couple things I'd like to talk about.
Yes, please.
I want to highlight some behavior here. So these print ones are just playing things, and I still think playing with code is a great way. So what do I have? I've got like 4 little playpens in one file. I can run them each individually. I don't have to run the whole thing. I can just run little parts of it, which is great. Like I can even go back up and run this run, and it doesn't run everything. It just runs that. But within like both PyCharm and VS Code as well, I can also just run the entire file, and I can get all of these. So it's good. But and if one of them's breaking, I can just rerun it and stuff like that. But anyway, I want this is just be comfortable with testing. It's great to just be comfortable writing little tests. So you're not afraid of the stuff. I like Pytest because the entire I got asked once what to define a file that was a template for what test files should look like. So I wrote this, just one file that said test, because that's all you need to run a test in Python. Is you need something that starts with test underscore. The file should start with test underscore, and that's it. Whatever you want to put in there works. And I just learned while I was writing the second edition of the book that ... is a thing that you can just put in, because that's valid syntax. Did you know this?
No, is that like pass? What is that?
It's the ellipses. There's an ellipses object, and it's in place so that we can do it. You do things like with NumPy and stuff. They can use that as a syntax element, but it's just a thing that's the ellipses object. But I use it for this because when teaching about testing, this is kind of it's misleading, because pass means it doesn't mean the test passed, although it does pass because there's no assertion errors. But anyway, so the ellipses,
but the ellipses also passed it though too.
Yeah, well, anything passes as long as for Pytest, everything will pass unless there's a uncaught exception.
Mm-hmm.
And assertions cause an assertion exception. So that's how so something to point out, it's really easy to write a test, and assert works. And assert works really well. Like let's make this bar like bar instead. So we know this is going to fail, and it's going to fail in a great way, because we can see, come on, let's go up. Expected far, and I got foo instead. And it prints that out right there. And Pytest will say, hey, this is your expected and actual, and it shows you exactly what went wrong. And that's not what you get from an assertion error normally. You don't get this much detail. And if we had a list, it's even awesomer. So let's take that, fix that. And if I wanted to do like x equals 1, 2, 3, y equals 1, 2, 4, 1, 2, 5. The assertion error there is going to point us exactly with good little carrots to show you exactly what's the problem. It's pretty awesome.
Wow.
So we get a lot with not much. We just can use asserts, and they don't have to be equals. We can do like assert 5 in Y. Any assertion will work. Any expression. And what else? Oh, so normally we don't have print. We can have print statements, but you don't have to. And it doesn't really help your test. But a test is usually in the form of something like arrange act assert is the mantra. So I arranged some stuff, I arranged some data, and I did an action. Well, I don't really do an action here, but you could do an action, and then you assert the outcome. And keeping those straight of like get some setup if you have any, do some action, and assert some outcome helps you with the blank tests problem. It also helps you with having really problematic tests, because workflow tests, for instance, like let's say on my cards application, we had like I could add a to-do item and then start it and then change it and do some stuff. That's fine. But if I had assertions after every action, that's a workflow test. And they're not terrible, but you don't want too many of them, because it can, anytime something fails, like it's going to be messy. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah, it does.
Like on the stack one, for instance, if I pushed foo and assert that the stack is foo, and then let's do another push bar, and now my stack is bar. So that would be a workflow test, and it's mixing up the action and assertion. So here I've got arrange is getting the stack, the action is push, range act, and the assert is the assert.
So would you break that up into 2 tests?
I would totally break it up into 2 tests. Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, one of the cool things about Pytest is we can note that my arrange is getting the stack in 2 places. Now this is just one-liner, so it's not that big of a deal. But with Pytest, I can import Pytest and make a fixture. And it's just a fixture is just a function with a fixture decorator, and I can call it stack. We can call it whatever we want, but I'm going to return a new object. Return stack. So now it's going to replace this line, and I can just say get that fixture, get that out, and I can do stack push, stack pop. There. Now I've pushed my arrange into a fixture, and it makes all my tests smaller. And now I can push 2. Yeah. So then I would make those 2 tests, but now they're easier to write because they're smaller. So hopefully they work. Yeah. And the other thing I like about having small tests and stuff like this is because it's really easy to go through and just run everything and make sure everything's still working. So
yeah, I really like that clicks in my head for me about arrange, action, and assert. A lot of times when I'm thinking about testing, the workflow aspect trips me up, but this makes it. And I eventually get to arrange, action, assert, but never heard it bundled like that. So I really like that a lot. That's
Now,
a great piece
the
of
the
advice.
other way to think about it we got from behavior-driven development is given when then. So we can think of like, oh wow, the stack is let's go ahead and fix this one also. We don't need that. Stack, push, foo, and then pop. So the arrange, instead of arrange, we can say given a stack, when we push. Oh, that's so given a stack and a push. So that's both part given a stack and we pushed an item. So that's still the getting ready. We haven't done the action. When we pop, and then the assert is then. So behavior driven development is the same thing. It's a range act assert, but it's just different names. It's given when then. So given a state, when we do some action, then something is true about the system. To me, a range act assert is both of them work in different situations. When I'm working with a stateful system, sometimes I can think about given when then easier. So it's funny, this is fresh in my mind because I just wrote just did the course the chapter 7 on strategy for the course. I just wrote that down, or just recorded it last weekend. So the given when then helps me because I can think about like the way I'm going to like write a couple rules down. I like to do to start off my blank canvas when I'm just writing a test for something. I'm like, well, what should I test? What test should I write? The first one is a non-trivial happy path. I'm not trying to go crazy. I'm just trying to do something. Like in this one, push and pop. So example, push foo. Next, so that's an example happy path. If I'm testing push, testing push. Then where do I go from there? I mean, is that fully tested? Maybe not, but the next thing I want to do is think about given when then or arrange act assert. And I want to think about interesting, I'm not going to type all this out, but I want to think about interesting starting states and interesting ending states and anything special about an action. So or any interesting input. So push and pop, there's push, I have like a thing. So is there anything interesting about pushing something? Now I'm just using a list. So anything that goes into a list, if I try to test input for that, it's just testing the list data structure. So I probably won't touch that. But interesting inputs or different interesting given states or ending states, starting or ending, there are a couple of cases. So for pushing, I probably want to test adding something to an empty stack and also adding something to a non-empty stack. So those are two interesting things. And popping is the same way. I want to see what happens when I pop something off of something within something in it. I guess there's a few interesting states. If I've got like more than one item in there, then a pop should leave stuff in there. And so I've got more than one item and 0 items. I probably would test all 3 of those. So those interesting it's all parts of this, all the parts of given when then. Are there anything interesting about the 3, the ending state, the starting state, or what I'm doing, and write tests around those? If I get through that, if I go through a non-trivial happy path test case and then think about just like the obvious interesting actions around all of these and then move on to the next one, I usually have enough. That's a lot of tests already, and I'm pretty thoroughly testing a system. And I was actually surprised. I've been doing this for so long. I think this helps people. It does. It is the blank page problem with testing is a big problem. People don't know where to start, and then what? And then what I've seen is people like look up, especially developers. They look up stuff. How do I write tests? And there's so much documentation on unit tests.
This is me.
There's so much documentation on unit tests that people find all that stuff and they're like, oh, I've got to mock everything and write isolated tests and all this sort of stuff, and I want to write test every individual function and every individual class, and I don't do that, and that's scary to do. And I think people get it if you do that and you love it, great, but that's intimidating for a lot of people, so I don't recommend it.
Yeah, honestly, I'm always like, even, watching right now, one of my big questions is like, how do you get started with unit testing? Like, that's kind of been a question for me where I'm just like, how do you just kind of like jump in?
I I would mostly I test how would you know if you weren't writing a test, how would you know something's working? Um, and if you can think of a way to like do it with code without a test, you can just write a test around it and call it a test.
Okay, cool. That's what I've been thinking, but I'm just like, maybe I'm not thinking about this right. I think it goes back to what you're saying where, I'll sit there, read something or watch someone do something, and I'm just like, I wonder if I'm thinking about this too like simplistic or what. And I'm just like, am I doing this right?
And there's one of the things I started with probably a a hard example of the hello world because this is non-trivial to test if I were to write a test, an actual test around it. Um, sometimes, except for Pytest, it's really easy. Uh, it's just not obvious. So let's say I actually want to write an assert around this. Um, that it's just printing hello world. How do I write a assert for that? Well, you can just use a cap. The Pytest has a whole bunch of built-in fixtures. So we used this stack fixture. We just wrote this little fixture that returned our stack object. But we can use capsys as one of the built-ins, and it's for capture system stuff, capsys. And I'm going to go ahead and just say around the hello world with capsys. I can't remember what the actually I can't. It's good. I read a book, so I don't have to remember this stuff. With capsys as I should have looked this up ahead of time. No, I'm gonna cheat and go look it up.
I love the fact that when you and I first met, you had a copy of your own book there, and you were looking up stuff that you had written down because you're like, I write these things down so I don't have to remember them.
Exactly. Yep. Okay. So we don't have to do the with. We can just print hello world, and then we can do afterwards we can say capsys readout error, and we can have out an error. I don't know what's going to be in here. So out should be hello world, right? Oh, there's probably a new line there. And there shouldn't be anything in error. But let's print it out anyway. Assert equals what? None? I don't know. And we can just run it and see. What? Oops. One equal sign. So actual was world with a new line. So what would we do? I wouldn't probably add a new line there, even though it's there. What I usually do is strip it. So I usually say assert out dot strip equals hello world. Does that work? Oh, because we stripped the new line there. Cool. So I just highlight this because one of the first things I try to do is I like to print stuff. And so for little programs with print statements, capturing the output and asserting what the output looks like is, even though it's a non-trivial thing to do, because we need to do this captchas fixture and read out error from it. It's not that bad. And since I don't know, we don't really have to, if we don't care about the error, one of those things, it returns two things, but we can do that. We can do out captchas read out, and so the underscore to say I don't care about it. It's a Python thing. It can be any variable, but Python traditionally we use the underscore, but we can also just say out dot strip, and then we don't have to do the strip there. I think that works. Didn't work. Okay. Str has no object is not callable. Oh, yeah, well, that makes sense. I just grabbed a string, so. Yeah, real time debugging. So, but that's not bad, is it? I mean, that looks pretty good. Anyway, 2 lines of code to assert a print statement. It's not bad. The reason why I kind of wanted to go not too crazy in this hangout was because I think people think that they should test a whole bunch, and you should be writing tons of tests, but start with one. You should write one test and learn how easy Pytest is to do the easy stuff. The thing you need to know to start out is test underscore is important for your file name and your test name, and then run Pytest on it. And I've been doing it all through this editor stuff, but it's really easy through the terminal also, because it's just test. So we have test print. I can just say Pytest test print, and it prints these dots to say everything's passing by normally. And we can say -v for verbose, and it shows all these little list ones. And then you can just highlight one if you want to run one of them, because you're working on that. You can just grab that and say Pytest and that one, and then -v, and it just runs one. Things like this. These are great. So, any other questions or?
Just a comment. A lot of the PyPI testing frameworks, like if you want to contribute to PyPI, all of their backends are done using multiple versions of. They have all these different testing frameworks in there, and it's a very so this is a great getting your feet wet, learning how to get into Pytest, and then if you want to see a really blow your socks off version of it, Mike Fiedler, who's one of the maintainers, has some really eye-wateringly exacting testing frameworks established in PyPI. No, this is fantastic. This answered a lot of my questions. Thank you.
Cool. So we're testing really simple stuff here with this, like testing stacks and print statements and things. But Pytest is so powerful that you can test tons of cool stuff. So I'm working on, what I do for a day job is I write code for and manage a team that writes code for a test system that tests Wi-Fi systems. So it's testing the protocol stack and the RF for Wi-Fi devices. This is a hardware thing, but it's got an API to run all the different test functions and set things up and transmit things and read things and all this sort of stuff. Has an interface that's controllable from Python. So for a regression suite to run to our end level end-to-end tests on this box. It's all written in C++ and other languages. I'm using Pytest to run this, and we drive it with fixtures. We can set up signals. We can run a test. We can read all sorts of stuff. So you can test everything from a print statement to hardcore electronics with Pytest. So anyway.
I think the interesting thing too is they're just functions, right? So if let's just say those top two tests there,
yeah,
if instead of you wanting to pass in, say, I don't know, name Brian, or that's and maybe even like greeting, you could probably create, that's a bad example, but if you had, like, let's just say you had two tests and you wanted to pass like a dictionary into both of those tests, you could define that outside the test and just pass those in as parameters to the function, I'm assuming.
Well, we're not actually calling this. Pytest is detecting these functions and calling them, but we can do more things, like let's say I wanted to do Brian and Chris, maybe. We can do Pytest mark parameterize. Parameterized testings are awesome. And you can say name, and we're going to give it a list of Brian and Chris. And now that's just parameterizing this, but then I need a name here. And then I can pass in those two different things to the same test. And it didn't work because why? Oh, because I did the import in the middle of the file. So now my test of f strings, wherever it went, is really two tests now. I've got a Brian test and a Chris test. So.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Very cool.
Yeah. So the parameterize also is it's like amazing. We've got like, so I'm testing these RF things. I've got a bunch of arbitrary waveforms that we do. We do an arbitrary waveform generator, which just generates signals. And I've got like these definitions for these signals. Maybe I've got a dozen of them that I throw at a test, and suddenly I've got one test that's testing a dozen different waveforms, and all I do is do this parameterized thing and pass it in. That's pretty great. So yeah, but you can really get deep. So we did, what did we get? Like built-in fixtures. We did parameterize. We did fixtures. Looked at assert a bit. You can start simple and then just build up. And it's pretty fun. What I really want, and I got into this not because I really love testing. I got into this because understanding a test framework is like understanding an editor. So to make coding fun, you don't want to fight your editor. So knowing a few things about getting around your editor and being able to search for code and stuff like that, search for, like, where is this function used, and being able to use those sorts of features just help you develop faster. And then being able to write tests around it so that around your code that you trust it, it's just more fun. So I started teaching Pytest because it wasn't taught well. So I think it's being taught well now. So anyway,
well, especially now that you're making a course on it.
Well, also there's trainers. There's a lot of the core developers contributed both to the first and second edition, and I wanted to make sure that they were on board. For one is because I wanted to make sure I didn't teach a feature they were planning on pulling out.
Right, yeah.
And then also a lot of them teach in their free time as well. They do in-person training, and hearing that they they often recommend the book at their trainings. That's pretty cool. So
Nice.
a lot of great people working on the Pytest project. So
Give us a little plug for your book. I'm actually whenever I want to buy somebody's book, I always think it makes it more sense to share the love as well. So how if somebody were interested in getting your book, how would they get it, and what's the best way so that you get the most profit from it?
well, I'm going to share a different screen. So if you head to pythontest.com, I've got a link to Pytest book. And how probably it's Pragmatic Programmers is the publisher. If you wanted the ebook, then go through Pragmatic, but they don't sell the physical book through them. But if you want it, it's just whatever's easier for you. I'd like you to learn more about testing. It not giving me profit is a minor thing.
Look, we're all trying to lift each other up here. It's fine.
I
prefer a physical copy. So what's the best way to get a physical copy?
The best way is to go down to the local bookstore close to you and ask them to order it.
Okay.
They probably won't have it in stock because it's a niche book, but then you would be supporting both me and the local bookstore. If you wanted the physical book and the cheapest way, it's probably through Amazon, but I like to go through local bookstores. Then the Pytest course, of course, is a great way. So if you click on Pytest course, it'll take you to here. It's currently on Teachable. I'm changing the URL, so I will say go to pythontest.com's courses if you want to check out the course. Nice. And if you really want to if you just can't get enough of my voice, there's lots of ways. You can check out Python Bytes, where we deliver Python news and headlines directly to your earbuds once a week. And then Python People is where we get to know people, the people of Python. And then Python Test is still at testandcode.com. It may change in the future, but one of the things I like is I just recently changed the name, and I didn't know what to do about the logo, so I just put stickers over the logo. So anyway,
that's exactly how my laptop looks, so it's perfect.
Yeah, that's how my laptop looks pretty much too. But you have to be careful. If you're ever going to use the Python logo, you have to show the complete logo. I couldn't have covered up at all, or else you're violating the copyright rule.
They're so draconian. They always come out with the lawyers first. The PSF. They're so nasty. Just right up there with Oracle. Oracle and the PSF. They're just known for their lawsuits.
But I also love the PSF, so I'm okay with it. So,
exactly.
Yeah. Anyway.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Well, Mr. Okken, it was, as always, it's a pleasure having you on. Are you going to be at PyCon 2024?
If there's any way for me to get there, I will be there. I want to. I don't get, since I don't, my job isn't, I use Python like all day long almost, but my job thinks of it as kind of a side thing. It's like, oh great, use Python, whatever. So
you haven't done the do you know who I am yet?
Well, they brag about it too. They'll hire people and they're like, yeah, that one guy over there wrote a book too. But I say, okay, I'm going to go to PyCon. Can you pay for it? They're like, no, we don't want to pay for it. So it's out of pocket, but PyCon I love. So the two places I like to go every year is PyCascades and PyCon US.
Yeah.
I'd love to go to the other ones. I'd love to go to PyCon Europe and things like that. But
well, if you want to get into developer advocacy, you could go to all of them all the time. Let me know if you want to get in the biz. I will walk you through the process.
We'll see.
Awesome. All right. Well, Mr. Okken, it was wonderful having you on again. Super appreciate you as always. Folks, check out his book, check out his podcasts. They're super fun to listen to, especially the ones where him and Mr. Kennedy get along so well. It's a great yin yang of energy. It's fun. You have to listen to them together. Thanks for stopping by. You've squandered yet again another. Wait, how does Click and Clack do it? You've wasted a perfectly good hour yet again listening to the Tappert brothers. That's. Do you remember that? Do you remember that from NPR? Am I showing my age here?
I that was way before my time. No.
What? All right. Brian, have a great night. Everybody have a wonderful evening, and we'll see you again next week.
Thanks. Bye.